Hey, Ryan. Hi, this is Sarah Palin.
Ryan, Donald Trump Jr.
Harsh to NC. Hey, everybody, I want y'all to check out a fellow Marines podcast.
My name is Ted Nugent, and I got a call from my buddy Ryan F. Samuels, and he wants me to tell you that he's a working hard, playing all-American son of a who is celebrating God, family, country.
Welcome to the Ryan Samuels Show, one of the top political podcasts in the United States, where we have a healthy distrust for government and mainstream media. The Ryan Samuels Show is a raw, unfiltered look at American politics. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Here is your host, Ryan Samuels.
Hello, Patriots. So if you thought that the persecution of political enemies or all of these incidents are completely isolated to Donald Trump, you're wrong. Recently in Oregon, we saw that the Oregon Supreme Court has restricted 9 Republican senators, and this state senators, for running from re-election, for protesting and walking out of a vote in a hearing. And the Supreme Court of Oregon has said you cannot run for re-election. However, if these were conservatives, I have to think that it would have been processed much differently. And we'll get to more of that in a minute, because previously it has been the same scenario happened with Democrats, and we all wrapped arms around them and portrayed them as victims. Let's listen to this news report on the original walkout.
And Pat, throughout this process, we've heard people saying this hasn't been the way that Oregon has conducted its politics in the past. And it kind of begs the question, is that old way over with?
Well, we'll have to see. Hopefully not, because after all, they're doing the people's business for the entire state. And you do need the two parties to be able to come together. And there's a lot of things that they can agree on. More state troopers on the road, easier rules for farmers to dig ditches, that sort of thing. And those are some of the things that still have not passed. So we'll see. You know, this is the end of like a marathon session. So people are wrung out, they're frustrated, they're exhausted. They can extend the session, but one reason they don't want to is a lot of people have 4th of July plans, and they have been looking forward for so long to get out of there. Exactly. They're just regular people. They want to get out of there. So we'll see if this is a bump in the road. Hopefully it is just a bump in the road, but you know, with the national conversation getting hotter and hotter all the time, it might be bleeding over as well.
Let's take a listen just for a moment about some of the things we've heard from lawmakers.
The trust in the Oregon State Capitol is probably at the lowest it's ever been.
And clearly we're struggling with trust. There's no question about it.
So you're hearing that there are strong feelings about the lack of trust. And really, it's almost like a marriage, you guys. As soon as the other spouse stops assuming that you have their best interest in mind, now every word you say is a possible battle that's about to start, as opposed to you believe they have your best interest in mind, so it doesn't really matter what they say. You know where their heart is.
This is
they
kind
have
of
some scars now.
Yeah, and this is kind of the analogy that the two of us have, at least have been kind of sharing back and forth in the newsroom as we discuss this. And just like a marriage that starts to have trouble, it doesn't just right itself automatically. I mean, can they get back on track? Are they going to be able to work together in the future?
Well, or tomorrow, for that matter.
Right, in the future, as in tomorrow.
They will, because, you know, they've got to get this done, and everybody wants to get the people's business done. These budget bills are important to both sides, so they'll find a way. They may not like it. There may not be a lot of warm hugs, but they will. And then for the long-term fix, I think that's just going to take a lot of time.
Now, one last quick note. Cap and trade will come up, we believe, for a vote tomorrow. You're going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm told it'll come up. It'll be one of the very first things when they meet at 9 a.m. It's not going to be voted up or down. I'm told it'll be sent to a committee.
Okay. All right, Pat Doris, thank you so much.
So, I mean, obviously, this is all leading up to the walkout, but obviously there's insane division in Oregon, as there is in anywhere in the country, and you know, this division is getting greater. But the only people who are facing serious consequences for it are conservatives. Now, about 5 or 6 months ago, we did a show here about lawmakers in Tennessee. Now, these lawmakers in Tennessee engaged in a protest with a bullhorn, disrupted the chamber, and they were expelled from the legislature by the Republican supermajority. And it was huge news. It was racism. It was discrimination. No matter how you sliced it, these were racist conservatives attacking brown people and women.
Thanks for watching 10 News at 6. I'm Robin Wilhoit, and we begin with breaking news out of Nashville. The State House is adjourned for the night after a dramatic few minutes on the floor. Lawmakers voted to silence a Nashville representative, Justin Jones, leading to building tensions in the gallery. 10 News reporter Vinay Simlot spoke with people who were cleared from the balcony just minutes before the House adjourned. Vinay, bring us up to date.
Robin, this happened about half an hour ago. This place erupted when Representative Justin Jones from Nashville was ruled out of order, and then people started yelling fascists in the House chamber. Speaker Cameron Sexton had the balconies cleared. Under this new rule, Representative Justin Jones would not have been allowed to talk for the rest of the session. I want to show you where we are. These are Tennessee Highway Patrol troopers who have told us we can't cross over the other side. They are right outside the House of Representatives trying to clear a path for lawmakers as they try to leave. We did speak with one person who was cleared out of the House chamber. We want you to hear what she said.
I've been kicked out of twice now, and this, and then the whole side of the gallery is empty. We know what they're doing. They're silencing us, and
silencing you.
Silenced, unfortunately for them.
Once Speaker Sexton cleared the balconies, people walked out. They've been protesting out here ever since. A tense situation here at the state capitol, Robin.
Okay. All right, Vinay, once again, the House and Senate, they have adjourned until tomorrow.
And they have, and both of them plan to meet again tomorrow. The plan was this: the House wanted to pass 27 bills of legislation in this special session. The Senate wanted to pass 3. The Senate gavelled in, gavelled out today. The Senate Majority Leader Johnson told us earlier today that the Senate has done its business. That's it. So now the next step is they have to come to a conference committee. If the House and Senate...
So these 3 people who were removed from the session and removed essentially from the chamber, they were removed they were expelled from Congress. And it didn't matter what the circumstances were. It was racist. It didn't matter if it was legitimate or not. It was a situation where you can't do that. They're elected officials. They have a right to protest.
New at 11, the 2 black Tennessee State House
2 black. Notice how he comes out and says that right away.
Democrats whose expulsion sparked a nationwide controversy in April have reclaimed their seats. Both Justin Jones and Justin Pearson were reinstated on an interim basis within a week of their expulsion, but they needed to win today's special elections in order to retain their seats. The 2 were expelled for taking part in a gun control protest along with Representative Gloria Johnson there on the House floor.
But when Republicans stage a walkout, they are removed. They are removed from running for re-election by the Supreme Court. Oregon is a extreme far left state. The entire state is completely blue. And that means that the Supreme Court is blue because the appointees are appointed by the left-wingers. And I mean, that's just how the process works.
Colleagues, a quorum is not present for the proceeding of the Senate.
Well, it has happened once again in Salem. Republicans have walked out of the job, halting all voting and discussions in the state Senate. It comes ahead of voting on bills about abortion and gender-affirming care. There are only 17 Democrats in the state Senate, and 20 lawmakers are needed for a quorum. Today, only 2 Republicans showed up on the Senate floor. Senate Republican leader Tim Knopp, blasted Senate President Rob Wagner in a statement that was released just about an hour ago. He called Wagner untrustworthy, deeply partisan, and argued that he's violating Oregon Constitution. Knopp says, and here are his words on the screen, laws are to be plainly written and easy to understand. When the majority of bill summaries that are written demand a postgraduate degree to understand what the bills do, we disenfranchise Oregonians across the state and violate the law in the process. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Kate Lieber responded saying Republicans are undermining democracy. She wrote in a statement, and we're going to show those words to you as well. It is no coincidence that Republicans are employing these embarrassing antics as the Senate is about to vote on bills that protect reproductive health freedom and establish common sense gun safety laws. Now, you may remember last year, voters approved a measure that aims to prevent these walkouts. Lawmakers cannot run for re-election if they have 10 or more unexcused absences in a session. Tim Gordon is in Salem right now. He's talking with leadership on both sides of the issue. He'll have a full report for us coming up, starting with our news at 4 p.m.
So the Republicans are trying to delay the vote, right? They're walking out. I mean, agree with it or disagree with it. It's really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We are not being treated the same across the board. Here's Rachel Maddow, Her Highness. I mean, this woman is the not the sharpest tool in the shed. She's about as sharp as a cue ball.
In 2019, in Oregon, Republicans in the state legislature walked out over a tax bill they didn't like. They left and they used their absence to deny the legislature a quorum, which brought the legislature to a halt for days. Then a couple of months later, they did it again. This time it was a climate bill they objected to. Several of them in that case fled the state. When the governor of Oregon sent state police out to bring them back, one Republican senator said that the police had better, quote, send bachelors and come heavily armed, as in, don't send anyone with a wife because the wives will be sad when we kill the police officers you're sending. There never was an armed showdown with state troopers, but the Republicans in Oregon did succeed in killing that climate bill by using that tactic. The next year, they did it again. They walked out as a group 2 weeks before the end of the legislative session, and they never came back. That killed the climate bill again. It killed 20 other pending bills that they decided just shouldn't be voted on at all.
There is this thing called tyranny of the majority, where the majority rule is dangerous for the minority. And I'm not talking about minorities as in race or religion or creed or sexual orientation. I'm talking about the minority opinion. This is an actual political, philosophical rule that the majority can promote tyranny on the minority, right? So the minority would be like gun people who want their guns. And in the state of Oregon, you're the minority in that situation. So the system is set up to where the minority can execute certain tactics like this to represent their electors and protect the minority decision and the minority vote. Because otherwise, majority rule, it would just crush anybody with a different opinion.
Then the following year, there were 2 more Republican walkouts, several days each. Under the state constitution in Oregon, you need to have a quorum to have the legislature in session. 2/3 of the lawmakers have to be present to do any business. So when the Republicans have done these repeated walkouts, it has stopped the legislature from functioning for any purpose, and it's happened year after year after year. So Oregon voters decided they didn't want this to happen anymore. In 2022, Oregon voters voted to change the state constitution to try to fix this problem. By a very wide margin, Oregon voters enacted an amendment to the state constitution that says any legislator who has more than 10 unexcused absences is not allowed to run for re-election. So you don't get thrown out, you get to finish your term, but you can't run again. Voters approved that as an amendment to the Constitution in 2022. And then what do you think happened in 2023? Not only did the Republicans in the legislature walk out again, they staged the longest legislative walkout in modern U.S. history. Oregon Republicans left for 6 weeks. They staged a boycott over Democratic legislation on abortion and other issues, but they just skedaddled.
So this is an example of the majority fighting against the minority, right? It's tyranny. It's called tyranny of the majority. Look it up, right? There's also tyranny of the minority too, but this is an actual thing. So the minority voted. The minority is in the halls. Their legislators are doing what they can do to protect the minority rights and what the minority wants, and the majority went to a popular vote, right, to change the Constitution in order to crush the minority.
They got out. And if this tactic sounds familiar, it should. Both parties have done this in various states at various times. Wisconsin Democrats famously did this to try to save union rights. Texas Democrats famously did it to try to stop a huge power grab by Republicans in Texas. The other states have done it. Other parties have done it. The difference here is that there are now consequences for doing it. Oregon voters overwhelmingly voted to change their state's constitution to say, okay, from here forward in our state, there will be consequences for you if you do this over and over again. You will not be allowed to run for office again. And even after voters changed the state constitution to say that, the Republicans in the legislature just kept doing it.
Well, of course. How else are they going to protect the voice of their electors? The people who elected them to office elected them to have their voice. If they're not using tactics to thwart off bills that hurt their electors, and she's right, this is done in states across the country. This is done in Congress and the Senate. This stuff is done all the time. This is nothing new. This is nothing noteworthy or groundbreaking or extreme or just like or like we've never heard of this before. It's a common practice. So these guys cannot run for re-election. So now their voice has been completely silenced.
Oregon Supreme Court decided that voters' intent, their understanding of the text, matters. And with Measure 113, voters likely expected immediate consequences.
The Republican-led walkouts in the summer of 2023 stalled work in the Oregon Senate. Without the Republicans, the minority party, the Senate couldn't reach a two-thirds quorum. Voters had passed Measure 113 to stop walkouts, setting consequences for 10 or more unexcused absences. The Oregon Supreme Court ruled Thursday that those consequences should be immediate, applying to the lawmakers' next term of office.
We knew the day we walked out that the possibility is that we would pay a pretty high price for it. And we knew it would go past 10 days. And our members, I think, believe that it was worth it.
In total, 9 Republicans and 1 independent racked up more than 10 absences during the walkouts. 4 of them, including Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp, now won't be able to run for re-election later this year. 2 others have plans to retire, and the remaining 4 will be barred from re-election to the Senate in 2026. Knopp said,
That's preposterous. Vote them out of office the next time. But they won't be able to. So that's the problem. They won't be able to because the district that these guys represent are conservative. So they're going to reelect them. They're representing this specific area of the state of Oregon. And that's the voice of that specific area. So they can't get them out of office because if they run a Democrat, the Democrat's going to lose. So the situation is essentially we're skirting the process and we're silencing the minority voice. And I'm against that on either side. You know, there are super liberal, super conservative states out there, like Tennessee with their supermajority. The minority vote has a right to a voice. They have a right to use political strategy to stop bills they don't like. That's how our system works. It's extremely important to protect the minority voice and the majority voice too. It's a balance.
Says he's disappointed with the court's ruling, but he believes Republicans won by using a walkout to get Democrats to negotiate.
And so we think that was a victory on principle, and I think most of our members, if you talk to them, would say they would do it again. I think they probably all would, quite frankly.
The legal challenge to Measure 113 rested on grammar, whether violating lawmakers should be punished on their next term or the term after that. The Oregon Supreme Court decided that context matters, writing, "We do not review the text in a void. We instead seek to understand how voters would have understood the text in the light of the other materials that accompanied it." Lewis and Clark law professor Tung Yin said the decision adds more legal weight to items like the voter's pamphlet and ballot title, not just the literal text of the measure.
The idea that you might look outside the actual language it's not controversial. I mean, some justices support that.
Knope says he doesn't plan to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Yin said any challenge now feels like a tall task. This sets the standard that Measure 113 applies to a lawmaker's next term of office.
Clearly, they would be on notice. That's it. That was your one free get out of jail card. You can't do this again. And any new legislators also are on notice that once you're elected, you can't do this because the law will take effect.
However, Knope says walkouts are still possible, and the court's decision doesn't take that political tool away.
The public does want some check and balance as it relates to a party's ability to just do whatever they want. If something comes up in the future, I think there's a strong possibility that it could happen again.
The 2024 short session starts on Monday. The Secretary of State said the court's ruling upholds the intent of the voters, and she's grateful for the clarity. Republicans will now be forced to replace most of their Senate members over the next 3 years. David?
And we'll see how that goes. So now they're basically beating the Republicans into submission. With these tactics. So let's watch this. This is a video of tyranny of the majority. Now this is Tocqueville, Democracy in America. If you've never read that book, it's a great book. Let's watch this video on tyranny of the majority.
My first memory was that of guarding ancient Athens against tyrants who might attack our freedoms. On my watch, a golden age dawned, lit by the brilliant minds of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But while I watched for tyranny without, I lost sight of tyrants within. Citizens who abused me, manipulated me for evil ends. I turned from loyal to lethal, from vigilant to vicious. I bit friend and foe alike before sinking my teeth into Socrates himself. I fled in horror and shame. For centuries, I hid in a deep, dark cave. I hid to protect myself from my tormentors and to protect man from myself. Then, one day, some men found me. They soothed my fear, fed me, and cared for me. They wanted me to come with them to America to become a guardian again. When I confessed my dark secret, they produced an answer: the Constitution. This collar and the words inscribed would keep me trained on my true purpose and keep those who might manipulate me at bay. So I joined them. Together, we launched a new golden age with technological marvels that would have made Socrates glow with pride. The Constitution did shield me, at least as long as men like the founders of America held the leash. But naturally, they passed away with time, and I found myself in the care of new men. These men felt the Constitution was old, outdated, and that I should be given more power. power to do whatever they thought was good. Roosevelt's New Deal, Johnson's Great Society, Bush's War on Terror, Obama's Obamacare. Demagogues pretended I could do no wrong, but I knew different. And so did one woman. Her name was Ayn Rand. She warned that without the Constitution, I'd become, and I quote her now, a social system in which one's work, one's property, one's mind, and one's life are at the mercy of any gang that may muster the vote of a majority at any moment for any purpose. And then it began to happen all over again. I felt the old madness return. My teeth grew longer. I began to growl and snarl, seeing enemies everywhere. I ran from one crisis to another, goaded by fear. In the frenzy of a global pandemic, my masters loosened my collar and let me trample basic rights to assembly, worship, and property. Even when my collar worked, my masters found ways to work around it, letting me snap at social media companies until they bent to political will. My citizens raged, and so I raged. They burned cities, beat protesters, and gathered in mobs threatening businesses, and even Supreme Court justices if they didn't bend to their will, the will of the mob. Rather than restraining me, my so-called defenders sought other ways to let me off my leash and expose me to corruption. They tried to eliminate voter ID, expanded mail-in balloting, even gerrymandered my districts to ensure their parties would remain forever in power. They shriek that I'm in danger. I'm on the brink. I'm under fire. All the while hiding my one true protection, the Constitution. I was bred to be a protector. Your protector. Now, I need you to protect me.
So that's from the Atlas Society. Basically, it's an allegory, and the narrator is democracy, talking about how that democracy is being used for essentially a power grab from since the passing of the founding fathers, which we talk about all the time on this show. But the danger of majority rule is inconsequential. It is substantial. Think of it this way. If we were to take a vote right now, just a popular vote across the United States of America, do we want to remove the Second Amendment? Do we want to remove the First Amendment? Do we want to just remove the Constitution? And they vote yes, then guess what? All of your rights are gone. And that's not how that works, because the minority rights need to be protected on both sides. There's minorities on the left too, but there's minorities on the right. And the notion that somehow we are going to have a popular vote to change the Oregon State Constitution in order to stop the minority electorate from using tactics to protect their electors from the policies their electors oppose is in a state where we know the majority is going to vote for that because they know that the conservatives are the one doing that. It's a preposterous notion. It's a preposterous notion. I mean, that's the way that the game is played. Anywhere. I mean, we saw, we've seen it in the United States Congress, where we've seen them block votes. We've seen them walk out. We've seen all of this stuff. But in Oregon, you can't do it. But you can do it in Tennessee if you are a liberal, because you're part of the system that they support. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Ryan Samuel Show. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ryan Samuel Show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.